All right, so in this sentence correction question, we are going to focus on the importance of the non-underlined information. That is everything, obviously, either in front of or behind the underlined portion. It's usually the part of the sentence that we take for granted and ignore. So we're going to work on training ourselves not to do that and to look for some clue words in the non-underlined sections. As always, I had to redact a few portions here for copyright. So if you go ahead and go down to the description box, you'll see a link to the full question on GMATClub. Go ahead and take a look at it. When you're ready, come back. So I'm not going to read the whole thing right now, but what I wanted just to point out in this question is, and actually if you haven't attempted this question already, you may want to do that and then come back, because we're going to kind of approach it from a different angle. There's two things I think that are really worth looking at in the non-underlined. Here we've got whereas, and whereas is a contrast keyword, right? So usually we have an idiom that is something like whereas X, ... comma, Y. And these two things sort of have a contrasting relationship. So we want to make sure that the whole sentence functions together to support that contrasting meaning. And then the other thing that I think is incredibly important, which it's funny, it should almost be the first thing your eye goes to, but I think because it's not underlined, most people just completely ignore it in this question, and it's the key to the whole question, and that's this word, and. And is probably my favorite word in sentence correction. It is so, so important, and does a lot of important things, and can create compound subjects, which will change what verb goes with that subject, and is also a marker for parallelism. Here, it's very interesting because the and is not underlined, so we can't change it. And what comes after it is letting. And letting air pass. So we need something that's going to be parallel with letting. And if we have that understanding first, it's going to be a lot easier to go through these answer choices. All right, so let's take a look. Now we'll read the whole thing. So for A, whereas a ramjet generally cannot achieve high speeds without the assistance of a rocket, comma, high speeds can be attained by scramjets, comma, in that they reduce airflow compression at the entrance of the engine, and letting air pass. Okay, well, we have a problem here because they're saying in that they, meaning, well, potentially some ambiguity here, which we don't like, but let's pretend that it's clear enough that it means scramjets. In that scramjets, the first thing they do is reduce airflow and letting. It's almost as if we're saying they letting air pass. Well, that doesn't work. Letting in this instance is not a fully conjugated verb, and it's certainly not parallel with reduce. They reduce and letting. No. They reduce and let, sure. But here we've got lack of parallelism, so A cannot be our correct answer. Let's take a look at B. Whereas a ramjet generally cannot achieve high speeds, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna ignore all that. Whereas a ramjet generally cannot achieve high speeds, comma, that high speeds can be attained by scramjets is a result of their reducing airflow compression. I'm going to delete that as well, is a result of their reducing airflow compression and letting air pass. Okay, so here you might say reducing, that ends in ing, so that's parallel with letting, fair enough, right? But if we take it as a whole, whereas a ramjet generally cannot achieve high speeds, comma, that high speeds can be attained by scramjets is a result of their reducing. That, in this instance, would be the subject of the sentence. Whenever that is the subject of the sentence, the meaning is really the fact that. So the meaning being presented here is the fact that high speeds can be attained by scramjets is a result of their reducing compression. It's just awkward, like the meaning is not clear at all. So definitely we have some problems with B. I mean, you could hang on to it if you want, but there's some issues. Let's take a look at C. Whereas a ramjet generally cannot achieve high speeds, comma, the ability of scramjets to achieve high speeds is because they reduce airflow compression and letting air pass. Well, we've got the same issue that we had in A, because they reduce and letting, not parallel. So awesome how noticing that and knowing that we need something to be parallel with letting is helping us go through these so much more quickly. D, whereas a ramjet generally cannot achieve high speeds, scramjets, have blah, 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 not underlined, or not non-essential modifier. Scramjets have the ability of attaining high speeds when reducing airflow compression and letting. Okay, so maybe here we're like, well, couldn't it be parallel with reducing, and letting? Okay, so scramjets have the ability of attaining high speeds when reducing compression and letting air pass. So it's almost like saying that they can achieve high speeds at the moment when, right? When refers to time on the GMAT, the moment when they're reducing airflow compression and at the moment when they're letting air pass. And again, if we take, I'm actually just gonna read the whole sentence one more time just so you can kind of hear the full meaning that they're trying to push here. So whereas a ramjet generally cannot achieve high speeds, scramjets have the ability of attaining high speeds, right? So that right there, great. It's like, a ramjet cannot achieve high speeds. Scramjets have the ability of attaining high speeds. That would be fine, right? But again, they have the ability of attaining high speeds when reducing airflow compression. And it's not literally like at the exact moment that they reduce airflow compression that they therefore suddenly are endowed with the ability of attaining high speeds. What they really mean here, what I think they're trying to say is something like they have the ability of attaining high speeds like by almost reducing airflow compression, that it's the reducing airflow compression and letting air pass is like the means or the method by which they attain high speeds. They don't literally mean like at the moment when. When is a really important keyword on the GMAT. It does come up quite often. So when can only be referred to time. Again, I think of it as like the moment when or the date when, the time when. That kind of helps you a little bit. All right, and then let's take a look at E. Whereas a ramjet generally cannot achieve high speeds, scramjets can attain high speeds by reducing compression and letting air pass. Yeah, I didn't intend to correct it like that, but now that we've seen what's wrong with D, we can see why E is correct. That's quite hard to choose between D and E here because it really gets into pretty advanced meaning, I would say. But again, by reducing and letting, perfectly parallel, so that's great. Major takeaways here. The non-underlined information, that is the big takeaway. It's incredibly valuable. Always look at it. Don't only, look at the whole sentence. Don't just go to A and only read the part in A. Make sure you're looking at the whole sentence always. And think about meaning. Meaning is incredibly important on the GMAT. All right, if you have any questions about this question, feel free to ask them in the comments below.